No. Yeah, I got to go back to school.
Yeah. Yeah. They just ask questions and then what's up? The bin of the.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole talk about what like everybody always asks you something or like, whatever.
Outside of no, it's. I don't know what this. Yeah, he's. That's exactly what she. Yeah, I'm looking at, I'm his caretaker though, so like. Yeah, he just read about it. So that is.
So that's a playground.
Yeah, it's not. It's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
No, I turned it off for this. I don't think it shouldn't have any.
You made it on time?
Okay, can everybody hear me out there? Mike's on. This meeting is now called to order. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see everybody watching tonight. Members of the public may address this. Okay, are we ready?
You're on YouTube. I'm just also doing a local recording.
No worries, let me know if I need to slow down. Members of the public may address the city council on matters within the jurisdiction of the city of Lindsay. Persons wishing to address council concerning an item on the agenda will be invited to address the council during the time that council is considering that agenda item. Persons wishing to address council concerning issues not on the agenda will be invited to address council during the public comment portion of this meeting. When invited by mayor to speak, please step up to the lectern, state your name and the city of residence, and make your comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. If we can do the roll call, Ms. Lacy, please.
Mayor Romero Sana.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Yolanda Flores.
Here.
Councilmember Hippolyto Soros.
Present.
Councilmember Rosanna Sanchez is absent with notice. Councilmember Misty Villarreal.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Lacy. Now we're going to go into the invocation. Please stay seated. This time I'll do the invocation, but when it's time to do the pledge of allegiance, I'll ask you guys to rise. Thank Father God for this opportunity to just come before you, Father, and just ask for wisdom and guidance as decisions when we're facing, Father, to make sound judgments, Father, for the benefit of this community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so moving on to Pledge of Allegiance, if I can have everybody please stand. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated, thank you. Okay, so we have an approval of the agenda. And we're going to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a first by Flores and a second by Saros. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the public section comment on the agenda. The public is invited to comment on any subject under the jurisdiction of the Lindsay City Council. Please note that speakers that wish to comment on a regular item or public hearing on tonight's agenda will have an opportunity to speak when public comment for that item is requested by the mayor. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person, with 30 minutes for a total comment period, unless otherwise indicated by the mayor. The public may also choose to submit a comment before the meeting via email. Public comments received via email will be distributed to the council prior to the start of the meeting and incorporated into the official minutes. However, they will not be read aloud. Under state law, matters presented under public comment cannot be acted upon by the council at this time. At this time, I'd like to open up public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please come forward, state your name and the city of your residence.
And we do have. Come on up. From the
Welcome, welcome. State your name.
I'm Raul Navarrete.
Welcome, welcome. You're welcome.
So we're here to
There's a project idea, from the so-called gas station. That will
and bringing Lindsay together. We are planning on probably bringing in parklets, Lindsay and having Lindsay more engaged and more active. But not just that, it will also benefit Lindsay, like we'll have more walking around. And we'll also improve greenhouse gas. Oh, yeah, reduce greenhouse. And we'll have more people walking around, to be more engaged, more fun, and we're trying to bring in more people downtown. And we are planning on getting donations from small companies, not just that, but also LHS Clothing for them to be involved. Maybe paint a mural on there and have LHS arts so that way learners can be part of the community and have an input on part of the community that they can use.
I love it. Great, great idea. Thank you for coming up and sharing with us. What do we have a projected date for the event?
Yeah, we're just in the planning process right now.
Okay. We would love to hear from you guys when it all comes together.
Yeah, and great place to start is the municipal code. So the municipal code has all the rules as to what can occur, especially downtown. So right now, our municipal code does not allow for parklets. So if you just explore what it says there and have a good idea like the one there, which I love, I support it. But we can definitely get a ball rolling, and I'd be happy to help you walk through it.
Absolutely. Any comments?
I'm glad you guys came. I love to see, Lindsay learners, especially Lindsay learners coming here with new ideas and stuff like that. I applaud you guys. I'm all for it. If we can make it happen, we're here to back you up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great job.
Thank you, guys. Anyone else wishing to get public comment? Come on up, please.
I'm too old, very walk.
Well, thank you for coming on. State your name.
My name is Basilio Huerta. I live in 1058 Sherman Court, Lindsay. The only concern I got right now is just increase the water rates. The water we have right now, over the 1,000 and the million, it seems like it came out of Foxborough. Bad. Came to the city every month to go over there to flush the hydrant, because that helps. See, with the price of water right now we pay, it's pretty high. You see the city, it's like a ghost town. All the yards that dry because they don't have no money to spend in water. If you increase the rate, well, some people can afford it, some people can't. And there's another thing. You guys have a lot of lakes on the sea. 3 years ago, you have one in Sycamore. And I can't remember the other one. Anyway, it was running that water for 3 months. Finally, somebody put them on the internet and they fixed it. Right now, you got one over there by Foothill. Been running for a month and a half. I don't know if they have any parts for it, but if they don't have any parts, go to the store and buy it, fix it. If you want to save water, just do it the right way. Okay, that's my concern. The water we have, it's just not even good for drinking. My grass, of course, I watered this morning, but it's dry anyway. But some other things, can do it. If you got so many people working for the city, 2 weeks ago, I went by the park, I walking. There's 5 guys work for the city. I don't know if they got a meeting over there or what, on the park. 5 years ago, you got people planting the trees on Westwood, 5 guys planting a tree. That's wasting money. Taxpayers get tired, and I'm a taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's your address, please? First name?
Basilio Huerta,
Basilio.
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 BASLE.
Basilio, can we have your address? What
Yes,
street?
told you already.
1058 Sherman Park.
Sherman Park?
Been there for 35 years.
Thank you, Wesley.
Okay.
Is there anyone else wishing to make a public comment this time?
Hablamos español.
Si quiere hablar en español, pase para adelante, por favor.
Aquí estamos.
Okay, hearing none, this section of public comment is now closed. Moving on to council report, we'll start to my left here, Lindsay.
Yes, three things to report. So one, I attended the League of California Cities. Happy to say that the resolution, pertaining to, equal treatment for California State Legislature members and elected officials on the local level to pass almost unanimously. I went to a really cool workshop regarding AI use in combating mis and disinformation. I think as, you know, as societies kind of, evolve, that's something that we're really seeing, not just on a federal level, but local levels too. So that was real interesting. Second thing to report on, tomorrow is a ribbon cutting ceremony for the pickleball courts. Hope to see you guys hope to see you guys there. And last but not least, please do not forget to vote. Voting is on November 5th. And make sure you guys' voice is heard, your voice is your power, and that's all I have to report.
Thank you for that, Councilman Mercedes. Moving on to Councilmember Villarreal.
Good evening. I also attended, he said almost everything I wanted to say, I should have went first. I also attended the League of Cities in Long Beach. I attended several seminars, very beneficial. I could bring back the things I learned to the city of Lindsay. So it was definitely a learning experience for me. Cool. And the pickleball, hope to see you guys out at the pickleball. Maybe we can play against each other.
Yes, I'm down.
Thank you, Councilmember Villarreal. Councilmember Flores.
I have nothing to report.
Thank you. I just have a few things to report. I also attended the League of Cities. It was a great event. Opportunity to network with other communities, other cities, and just really see what they're doing in their communities. I had great conversations from several towns, even local areas that we relate. Did see some Lyconians there, and so on. But I think that the more that we're provided the opportunity to network with each other, the more we can bring back solutions to our own community. And I really appreciated the event and also the workshops that they provide. We bring back a wealth of information that we can apply to our own city and use it in a way that helps our citizens in the long run. Also, I attended a few meetings, TCAD, TCARDA, TCTA, and so I'm proud to say that the TCAD organizations recognize the city of Lindsay for one of the projects that it did, and I just want to say thank you guys for working hard for that suburb that we had. Thank you guys. The Linda Vista, yes. I know that's something that's been worked on for quite some time, sidewalks and paving and roads. So thank you guys. It looks great out there. The other thing too is when it comes to funding, I think we're safe now to say that we'd like to go in the direction of the transit center and really explore some ideas and some projects that come up, what we're potentially looking at for building. I know there's been a lot of discussion on future funding, so I'll keep you guys informed of that. But other than that, nothing else to report. Thank you guys. That concludes my report. Moving on to now to the city manager's report with Damon Falls. Oh, it's not on here, but yes, we can have staff go first.
All right,
Let's
so
do some staff updates.
start with city services, if that's all right. So a little bit of an update on the Tulare Foothill project. If you've driven by that intersection, you can tell that there's been quite a bit of work done with that. There's been a replacement of a water line by LSID on Tulare Road, and they're connecting to an existing line that goes on Foothill. That's going to be continuing for the next several weeks. We got notice that the Olive Bowl Park is estimated to be at about 5% completion. So that's continuing to go. One of the things that we're looking at doing is kind of related to the public comment earlier, is putting out a graphic as to what water lines in the area of Lindsay are actually city lines versus LSID lines. Some of the leaks that were mentioned earlier are actually with LSID, so we want to make sure that people are actively reporting it to the correct district. So a little bit of outreach with that. We've been working on the RFQ for the design services for the transit center. We're hoping that that's something that we can do in the next couple of weeks, as well as the RFP for the well 11 inspection. So that's something that will be coming here in just the next couple of weeks.
Sounds good, Ryan. Not to cut you off, I just had a question. I know you've really challenged community citizens to report these findings. Is there a number that they can reach out to or let them know there's a leak, that they spotted something?
Yeah, so if they call the 562-7102, which will get them to the Public Works office, there's an option there. They can report it to us there. We will try to pass along any of that information. We actually got a report of a leak over on Todd's Hill, and we reported that. We passed it along, even though it wasn't something that was within the city jurisdiction. We want to make sure that these are getting addressed, so we passed that along.
Thank you for that information. If you guys have any further questions concerning leaks, please feel free to reach out to the city with the right direction. Okay.
And that's all.
Not finance, Ms. Lindsay.
Nothing additional to report in addition to tonight's agenda items.
HR.
Nothing to report tonight.
Public safety.
I have a few things to report. The banners are done. We just got them in a day or so ago. We have to go through and make sure quality check is all done on that, and we're planning on, we're in the stages of notifying all the people that have contributed to that project. And then we will have something tentatively on November 7th to have some type of a ceremony for the flags that will be going up. It will be up by that time and in time for Veterans Day. So that is the project that we're working on currently. Today I made my rounds with Adrian and Dave with all the schools out in this too. We didn't make it to, I think, Washington and Roosevelt. So I went and talked to all of the principals and several of the different staff over there, some of the learners. And I just wanted to make a site visit to each of them as many as I could, but we ran out of time. So that was actually a good experience for me because I hadn't been to all the schools, but I've been to a couple. And just learned a lot of different things and how they operate, what they look like on the inside and stuff like that. I also got, Tom Rooney is retiring. So I'll be reaching out to him to congratulate him and talk to him about that. Coming up on the November 4th, we have the Battle of the Badges. It'll be from 8 in the morning until noon. We'll be putting out some, it's a blood drive. It'll be, we'll have more information on that coming out on social media by the end of the week. The city manager and I had a meeting last week with HHSA in regards to what it revolves around SB 43 and Prop 1, which is the behavioral health and money that the state has or the county has got for the Casa Grande site in Visalia, which used to be a assisted living home. I know exactly where it's at, how it's built, but they're going to use that for housing homeless and some people that maybe don't want to be housed, and they're coming up with a different approach on treating some of these issues that cities have. Because some of the homeless just, they really don't want help, or they don't know that they need help. But we're looking at different approaches, because it's, for so long, it's, you know, they're pushing off on law enforcement, pushing off on other people, and nobody's really gotten any traction, or they just ignore the problem. And when it is a problem that we need to address and help these folks. So now we're starting to get a little bit of money and traction and concerted effort, and people joining together with law enforcement, medical staff, and the court system to actually address this. So they're looking at having some of this stuff taken effect at the end of this year. But the home, I don't think, will be ready until 25 or 26. I can't remember, but there's a whole lot of things that are going on to this, and there'll be several meetings going forward. But I am set up to do a Zoom type meeting with folks up in Sacramento for care court, which is it's something that we are able to intervene civilly with some of these folks to either, I hate to use the word force, but to get involved and get treatment or placement or conservatorship for some people that probably really need it. So that's something that's in the works, and that is pretty much all I have to report. I'll have a lot more on that.
Thank you for that, Rob.
This primarily addresses mental illness, correct?
It's mental illness, but it really bleeds over to the homeless, because there's a lot of mental illness in the homeless, and people that don't maybe realize they need it, because mental illness sometimes is drug induced, and sometimes it's just mental illness, and they just need help. And nobody is taking the reins on this to provide help. Now people are starting to finally realize it or acknowledge the fact that something needs to be done. You just can't ignore the problem, and it goes away. It just gets worse. So now at least we're starting to be able to do something to provide them. So I'm real excited about that.
Thank you for that. I know, coming from a mental health standpoint, I know a lot of it is biological, so it's beyond their control.
It is, and they're not criminals. So putting them in jail does not help any.
Yes.
Sometimes this makes it worse. Now they're gonna walk back to where they were dropped off or whatever, and now they're gonna get hit by a car. And it's just, there's just so many issues that go along with these things, and going ignored does not solve the problem. So
Absolutely, I'm in agreement, and I think reaching out and providing resources and connecting them to resources is probably a better bet than incarceration.
they have a team that's gonna travel. They'll make stops. They'll, say go to Porterville, stop by here. And if we kind of get maybe a client base, they'll go out to them instead of try to take them somewhere else. Because the people that are here, they don't want to be scooped up and taken somewhere else. But if they can provide services that will come to them here, I think they'll be better reached. So
I may have some ideas maybe. I know there's a mobile unit that goes out, distributes medications for those that qualify for medication. And some organizations are helping medication for pain.
okay. The people I spoke to seem to be very knowledgeable on this. I'm in the infant stage of this, of course. But hopefully after I attend some of this training, I'll be much more important.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Let's see. Recreation.
Oh, it's, good evening, council. I'm not sure if you heard about the ribbon cutting tomorrow, at 4:30 at the Wellness Center for the pickleball courts. So we're about 95% complete with the project. The only thing we're missing is the netting, around the courts, so balls will fly into the park. But we do have everything set, so we decided to just open them up. Everybody's been asking about them for the past month, so we're gonna be ribbon cutting tomorrow. 4:30 at the Wellness Center, so the community's invited to take part. Tomorrow, or Thursday night, we have our floating pumpkin patch, where we put the pumpkins in the pool, on the pool deck. The kids can go search for their pumpkin in the pool. They do float, so it's pretty exciting seeing the kids out there swimming alongside a bunch of pumpkins. They can carve the pumpkins after they're finished. They can put stickers on them, whatever they want to do. It's only $5 per person that tends to get a pumpkin. And so if there's a family of 6, only one person is going to get a pumpkin. It's only $5. So it's a very low cost family activity for the residents of Lindsay. Also, Marshall started the demo work for the skate park. So we're hoping that that should be completed around Thanksgiving, no later than Christmas. So once I have that date, I'll let you guys know. Thank you.
Thank you, Armando. Appreciate it. Thank you all for what you guys are doing, and just being involved in spearheading this project. And appreciate you guys' hard work. Moving right along to the consent calendar. Routine items approved in one motion. Oh,
You forgot about you.
You threw me off there. I'm sorry. Okay. Moving on to the city manager report. David Boss.
Visitors and Mayor and members of council. Just a few items to report, going back a couple of weeks, the day after our last council meeting, October the 9th, we had a very successful town hall meeting that was conducted in Spanish. Some of you were there. Neva did an amazing job presenting the information to our Spanish-speaking residents. She put together some visuals that just made it a lot easier to understand some of the information. There was some graphs, there was some charts that really helped kind of bring the whole situation to light. And I know I previously mentioned this, but I want to say again to not only me, but our internal staff, that I really appreciate all of the work and effort that went into this Proposition 218 process, putting all the information together and getting it out to the community. We had several very successful community meetings with the various groups around the community. Everyone seemed very receptive to what we're doing. I just really appreciate the work that went into making all that happen and allowing our residents to understand the picture. On Thursday, October the 10th, there was a special meeting of the Tulare County Regional Transit Authority Board. I know the mayor kind of mentioned this. During that meeting, the board did appoint Derek Winning as the interim director of TCRTA. At the same meeting, they also adopted Resolution 24-026, which formally established the Technical Advisory Committee for TCRTA. And as I'm sure you're aware, that TAC committee has been made up of the city managers from the member agencies. And so I'm very optimistic about the future of TCRTA under Derek's leadership. I think he's got some great ideas and he's already sort of hit the ground running with some ideas that he's implementing. On Saturday evening, October the 12th, my wife and I had the privilege of attending the food truck takeover at the Lindsay Wellness Center. What a great event. We had a blast. There were so many food options. I couldn't decide what I wanted to eat. So my wife said, just have one of everything. And it was just a great evening. Lots of food trucks. There was live entertainment. There were folks out dancing, just enjoying the evening. And we thank our recreation staff, Armando, for putting together such a wonderful event for the community. Chief already mentioned the meeting with HHSA. And I'm excited about the partnership that we have with this group. The governor back in July signed an executive order, and then the Supreme Court also voted in favor of Grants Pass versus Johnson. Both of these actions come with some very positive changes with regards to addressing homelessness. So I'm excited about working with HHSA on providing services for local folks who are experiencing homelessness.
This past Friday, Tulare County Association of Governments announced that it had secured $98.4 million in federal grant funds to widen and improve a 5-mile stretch of State Route 99 through Tulare. And they're also, as part of that project, they're going to completely redo that Page Avenue interchange. And so this is a great project, not only for the city of Tulare, but the entire county of Tulare. So we're excited to see that project get underway. The Sequoia Tourism Council's Tourism Summit is happening with the Visalia Marriott on this coming Thursday morning. This event came together very quickly, and I just got an email this afternoon from the Tulare County Resource Management Agency advising that, you know, one of the goals of this is to really highlight each community and to promote economic development. And the county has graciously taken upon themselves to decorate a table for the city of Lindsay, as well as the city of Farmersville, and they have invited me to attend that event to represent the city of Lindsay and talk about some of what the city of Lindsay has to offer. And so I'll be attending that on Thursday morning. And then our next First Friday Coffee Talk will be actually next Friday, not this coming Friday, but the Friday after next, November 1st. Where we're going to be highlighting our city services department, specifically our field crews. So we'd like to invite everyone to come out and participate in that event. That concludes my report.
Thank you, and appreciate your patience. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. Routine items approved in one motion unless an item is pulled for discussion. There will be no separate discussions of these matters unless a request is made. In which event the item will be removed from the consent calendar to be discussed and voted upon by a separate motion. Do we have a motion to approve, or do you guys want to pull an item?
My motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Saros and a second by Villarreal. All in favor, aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Moving on to action items, item 11.1. Approved 2023/2024 unaudited actuals report. And that'll be presented by Lacey Unis.
Tonight is the only time throughout the year that you guys get a full picture of the actuals that take place in the prior year. So the actuals for 23-24 are displayed up on the screen as I go through this presentation. The auditors may make adjustments based off of their findings during their audit. Two major areas that we want to make sure that the definitions are known is deficit spending is anytime that you are spending more than you are bringing in revenues, and surplus spending is when your income exceeds your expenditures. As we discussed late spring, our general fund had a beginning balance of negative $816,134.45. The revenues for 23-24 came in at $10,017,081.43, with the expenditures of $10,198,982.72, which leaves us an ending balance of $998,035.74. So as you can see, your expenditures are higher than your revenues, which means you are deficit spending. So for the 23-24, our general fund experienced a deficit spending of $181,901.29. This is the main fund that the city has, so we really need to monitor our spending in our general fund. Fund 102, our public safety asset forfeiture. We had $20,262 coming in for the year. We had revenues of $34.84, zero expenditures, leaving us an ending balance of $20,297.21. We are not deficit spending, and the current year surplus was $34.84. Our Fund 200 is Street Improvement Fund. These funds are committed for improving our streets. We had a beginning balance of $2,078,363.72. We brought in revenues of $1,058,305.56, with expenditures of $580,427.80. Our ending balance is $2,556,241.48. We are not deficit spending, and our surplus for the end of 24 was $477,877.76. Our Fund 260, which is our SB 1 funds, this is for road maintenance and rehab. These are restricted funds for that purpose. The beginning balance was $30,632.87. We had revenues of $302,680.22. Expenditures of $326,500, which leaves us a balance of $6,813.09. Yes, we are deficit spending. However, you notice there was a beginning balance of $30,000. These were planned, so the deficit is not too alarming for this particular fund. Fund 261 are our gas tax funds. We had $162,557.08 beginning balance. We brought in $348,333.79 in revenues. Our expenditures were $394,895.29, with an ending balance of $115,995. We are deficit spending in this account, but again, these are restricted tax funds that were committed and planned. As you can see, we had a beginning balance, and even though we're spending more than we brought in, it was a planned expenditure. Fund 263, which is our transportation fund, which is also restricted for those purposes of our transportation. We had a $368,505 beginning balance with $916,345 in revenues. Our expenditures were $427,169. And our ending balance is $857,680. We are not deficit spending, and we ended the year with a surplus of $489,175. Our transit fund with gas tax, which is Fund 264, had $7,457. We brought in a revenue of $1.51, had 0 expenditures with an ending balance of $7,458. And we are not deficit spending in that fund, and had a surplus of $1.51. Our state highway STP highway fund, Fund 265, has $1,081,428 in beginning balance. We brought in $282,38 with 0 expenditures, with an ending balance of $1,109,666. And we are not deficit spending. We had a surplus of $28,238. Fund 266 is our LTF funds. We had a beginning balance of $3,847,231.85, with revenues of $77,956. Expenditures was $539,264.82, with an ending balance of $3,385,923. We are deficit spending, but like I said earlier, these were planned. As you can see, the beginning balance, these are projects that we had already planned for. And then our McDermott sale proceeds. This fund is new because previously the funds were allocated for water projects through the HCD. However, the new projects that were identified are no longer within the water fund, because they were the pickleball court. They had the stipulations around them where they had to be moved to the appropriate fund and segregated for just McDermott sale proceeds. So the beginning balance was 0. The revenues that were moved into this fund, which are all the sale proceeds that we had left, was $609,388. We've spent $46,309 by the end of June, with the ending balance of $563,078.95. Currently, of that $563, we have the skate park, the wastewater treatment plant, and the pickleball courts, and we're down to about $121,000 left of that. So we've already spent quite a bit this year, but that's the latest on our HCE funds. Fund 305 is emergency fund. This one is alarming. The year last year started with a negative 559,503. We only brought in revenues of 29,205, expenditures of 27,988. The ending balance is still a negative 558,286. We're not currently deficit spending in that account because our expenditures were less than our revenues for the year. However, this is something that we need to look into and monitor very closely because your beginning balance should have not been a negative, especially when you're looking at $500,000. Fund 306 are your ARPA funds. These are one-time. These are the funds that we committed to the Cuckoo Park Olive Ball. And last year we had a zero beginning balance. We had revenues of $289,772.03. With the same amount in expenditures, we have an ending balance of 0. We are not deficit spending. Fund 400 is our wellness fund. We have a beginning balance of $5,159,394. Our revenues were $863,732, with expenditures of $1.2 million, leaving us with an ending balance of $4,822,707. And this one is deficit spending by $336,687. Our state parks fund is committed funds for the parks, and this account had a negative beginning balance, and it is also deficit spending. So our beginning balance is $12,811 negative. Our revenues were $23,181, with expenditures at $58,996, with our ending balance increasing to a higher negative balance of $48,626. So as you can see, this is one we really need to monitor and get ahead of, because we started with a negative balance and increased that deficit spending. For 471, which is our park improvement fund that is specifically committed for the park projects, our beginning balance was $132,000. We brought in $5,857 with 0 expenditures, leaving an ending balance of $138,194. We are not deficit spending in that account. Our water fund, tonight we're going to talk a lot about this one. Our beginning balance was $7,972,045. Our revenues were $1,905,391, with expenditures of $2,777,608, leaving the ending balance of $7,099,828. This one is deficit spending by almost $1 million at a deficit of $872,217. Our sewer fund is another one we're going to be talking about later tonight. This beginning balance was $4,766,587. The revenues were $1,486,511, with $1,130,875 in expenditures, with an ending balance of $5,122,223. We are not deficit spending. However, you'll notice tonight's presentation that the fair share, that $355,000 that we have in surplus, may not always be the case with the rate that we're going. Our refuse fund is also restricted. The beginning balance was $395,060 with revenues of $984,241. Our expenditures were $960,467. Our ending balance is $418,833 with only a surplus of $23,000. And this is another one that will be hit with the water and sewer rates that we're going to be talking about later this evening. Our fund 555 didn't have much activity. We started with $17,295 with $603. Revenue was 0 expenditures with a balance of $17,301.72. Our VitaPack fund is another one that we need to look at. The past couple of years, it's been a little bit out of whack. The beginning balance is $1,767.32. However, there is a contract in place, and this account should be starting with a 0 balance and ending with a 0 balance because it's on a reimbursement basis. So as you can see, our revenues were 84,687. The expenditures were 128,917, and the ending balance for last year was 42,462. So yes, last year was deficit spending. However, the imbalance goes back a few years that needs to be rectified. Our capital reserve, which is 576, had a 76,377 beginning balance. The revenues were $150.21 with an ending balance of 76,527 and 72 cents with no expenditures. Fund 612 is a housing fund, and this is one of the ones that we talked about in the spring. It had zero activity. There is a beginning balance of 5,055.32, and we're still waiting on a lot of the housing funds to hear what the state and when we turn those funds over to the state. The RDA retirement also is the 2015 bond. This one had a negative $9,538,464 negative beginning balance. Revenues were $904,399 with the expenditures of those debt services of $217,788, and our ending balance is still a negative $8,851,853. Our successor agent is also some more of those housing loans that we discussed in the spring. We still have a balance in that account of $870,615. We're still collecting small revenues on that and turning them over to the state. We're waiting for the answers from the state of when turn over the rest. Our balance after those revenues received is $874,579.30. Another housing loan is SRRP revolving, which started with $3,591. We collected another $1,153.96. So the ending balance in that account is $4,744.96. Another housing fund, which is the CDBG revolving. The beginning balance was $1,539,698. We've collected $5,264.46, turned over 71,601 in payments to the state with an ending balance of $1,473,361. Here's another fund for the housing, which is the CHFA. This one has a balance of $83,233. We've collected $1,535 and remitted $1,531 with a balance of $83,237. Another home revolving fund is a balance of $5,947 with revenues of $24,000. We have remitted $261,000, and the ending balance in that account is $5.7 million. Another Cal Home Fund is $885,599 with no revenues or expenditures, just waiting for another home fund. Fund 779 is another home fund, $20,283. We had revenues of $14.08, leaving the balance in that home fund $20,298. Another Cal home fund. The beginning balance was $1,216,850 with revenues of credit of 308, so that's a negative revenue, and expenditures of $16,057.92, which brings your beginning balance down to your ending balance of $1,200,789. Now getting back to other funds besides home funds is 841, which is your curb and gutter fund. These are restricted funds for your curbs and gutters. You had a beginning balance of $49,109, revenues of $18, and our curb and gutter fund now has $49,128. Our storm drain fund, Fund 856, started with $180,691 with $1,014 in revenues, and our ending balance is $181,706. Another Cal Home has a balance of $787,237 with no revenues or expenditures. Another HCD fund, which is STBG, has a balance of $123,439 with no activity. Now we're getting into the assessment districts. Fund 883 is our Sierra View district. This fund started with a negative balance of 3,850. Our revenues were 20,107. Our expenditures were 28,943. This increased our deficit to 12,686 for this district. So this is one of the accounts that we need to monitor, as it should not be experiencing deficit spending. Our Heritage Assessment District began with 13,673. We had $7,710 in revenues. Our expenditures were 8,081 with an ending balance of 13,302. We are deficit spending in this assessment district, and that should be monitored. Our Samoa had 6,527 in beginning balance. We brought in another 4,523 with expenditures of 3,579 with a balance of 7471, and we are not deficit spending in this assessment district. Our Sweetbriar townhouses began the year with a negative 13,492. We brought in 11,385. Our expenditures were 11,466 with an ending balance of a deficit of 13,574. This one we are deficit spending, and this one also should not be experiencing deficits, and we need to watch this one closely. Our Parkside, we had a beginning balance of 97.59. Our revenues came in at 5,741. Our expenditures exceeded those revenues at 14,398, leaving us with 1,103. And this one again is one that is experiencing deficit spending that we need to watch. Our Sierra Vista assessment is another one that really needs to be monitored, because our beginning balance was a deficit of 3,750. Our revenues were 5,885. However, our expenditures were 6,376, which brought our deficit ending balance down or up again to 4,240. And our Maple Valley assessment had a beginning balance of 1,560. Our revenues were 4,221. Our expenditures were 2,773 with an ending balance of 3,007. Our Palace Ranch is our last fund, I believe. And this one had a beginning balance of 1,080. Our revenues were 16,495 with our expenditures outpacing our revenues of 20,521, leaving us a negative deficit in balance of 2,945. We will need to continue to review all these budgets, decrease our deficit spending, balance the budget, and that will help us with everything that you guys heard from our auditors in the late summer. And we need to start having those clean audits removing them from the state's California High Risk Program. Are there any questions? But those are all the actuals of last year.
I don't have any questions. I know we've gone over this in depth, and thank you for your diligence in providing these actuals. I think one of the things that I do want to know is that I know we're in some deficit in some of the work, but overall, it's say that there's a positive to that. But we can see a lot of red, but how we still monitor that and just be diligent and
Right.
as to what's going on in this place.
Right, and a lot of this was already where we were in the spring, like I explained. I started in May and we closed out in June, so there's still a lot of work where we're continuing to improve our budget. But by the time we closed out, we were still in those negatives.
Yeah, I just have one thing. Nothing too surprising, of course. Perfect time to talk about the water fund and why we're considering increasing rates. As the public can see, the water fund saw a deficit spending of $872,000. The water infrastructure is in dire need of investment, which is why we're considering increasing rates to offset that deficit spending. Just want the public to see really that the water fund is struggling and the rates haven't been touched in like 10 years. 20 years. And the only way for that water fund to get into a positive is to increase rates. And the people just really, I want them to just understand that it's not just crazy spending that the city's doing, we're really trying to cut corners where we can. But nothing too crazy stood out of this unaudited actual report. Thank you.
To clarify, we're not cutting corners, we're using the money fruitfully. So that we can identify opportunities for growth and just, to do some cost effective work on this.
Yeah, that's not what I said. Yeah. Yeah.
Lacy, on the home project, we do home and, the Sierra View. Why are the expenditures so large on those? Basically, on the Sierra View and the Sweet Briar. The expenditures were pretty, large.
Okay, so Sierra View, the
What
expenditure,
is that? What number is that?
883. The Sierra View expenditures were 28,000 and revenues were 20. Those are the ones that I told you previously that I have to figure out. They go over several years. And, when I've asked staff, there hasn't been a lot of, clear guidance, so I'm having to go back at least 6 years right now and figure out why they started deficit spending there. And they continue to do so. So we're trying to educate our staff on how to read budgets also. And how to look at their budget before putting something in for an expenditure, because they're just coding things and there might not be money on that line.
Okay.
And that's when we talked in the spring where it was already too far gone by the time we were closing out, because I had started so late in the year, but we're working on that education.
I just wanted to make sure that going forward.
We're working on it, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Can you clarify, speaking, is your fund 101 changes in sales and use of 361,000, and then our measure O changes? Why is there such a big influence in that from? Yeah, measure O and our sales use. Does that mean there's been a decrease in sales tax that we received this last year?
Are you looking at this?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I go blind by that.
Which number are you looking at?
Fund 101, sales and use started budgeted at 1.189 million. With a balance of, looks like negative 361,000.
So this is where we talked about last year, you guys adopted the negative budget, bad budgeting, and not using realistic numbers and basically over budgeted, under delivered,
Okay, and is that the same thing for measure O?
pretty much, yes.
No more questions for me.
Is there any other questions?
You're welcome.
I understand this is an action item. Seeing no more questions from the council, I'd like to move to the public. So anyone that has a comment to make on this item? None, the section is now closed. Sorry.
Motion to approve action item 11.1.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Flores and a second by Councilmember Sarah. All in favor, aye?
Okay, moving on to action item 11.2, 2024-2025 water and sewer funds budget amendment, also submitted by Lacy Minutes.
Okay, so this is our original budget as you have been presented. In the spring, we adopted a negative budget. We have continued to work on these budgets just like we did with the general fund. And as we've been working through that budget, we have been able to prioritize and with the water rate study that we're going to discuss tonight. So this budget amendment will be contingent on the next item. We were at a negative 385,554 budget in the deficit to now with the water rates that we are proposing tonight to having an increase of $314,847 budget for water that will start to build the reserve for our water fund in case that there's an issue or something goes down. And then our sewer was adopted with a negative $311,645 budget. And after making the necessary adjustments, as presented, we will end the year with a $26,602 to the positive, contingent on the water and sewer rates being passed tonight. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. Any other questions?
Good to know that they could potentially go to reserve.
Yes.
Very good to know. Get that out of the negatives.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Fairly quick. Okay,
Motion to.
I think we have to open this.
Oh, that's all.
second.
That, I'm just so excited.
All right, so since we're through our discussion, I'd like to open up action item 11.2 for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make a public comment at this time? Please come forward, state your name, city of your residence. Seeing none at this time, the section is now closed. We have a motion to approve action item 11.2.
Motion to approve. Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Saros and a second by Mayor Serna. All in favor, aye?
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to public hearings. Section 12.1, Proposition 218, process and approval of 2024 water and sewer rates. The best one. We'll have to- Welcome.
Hi, good evening, council. Thank you for having me. So you probably didn't see my name because this is gonna be a team effort. So tonight with us, we will be, I will be doing the presentation along with Lindsay as part of the city presentation. And of course, we have our consultant here, Eric, he is part of the Bar Wells and Associates team that put this, study together for us. So tonight, we have several actions and recommendations for council. I would like to go over it, so we're all on the same page. So the first action, and like I said, recommendation would be council to receive the water and sewer rate study report by Bartle Wells and Associates as final. So we would like you to proceed to adopt it. The second action will be to conduct a proposition 218 public hearing for both water and sewer. And of course, we wanted to keep it separate, so we have two different resolutions that you will be voting on for tonight to approve both of the rate studies. So what we have done and how we have got here. So in 21-22, we saw a need to do several feasibility studies so we can identify and pinpoint how many projects we needed and what do we needed to include in this rate studies. So the city contracted with Provost and Pritchard, and they contracted with Barrow Wells since 2019. So this has been a long process, but we're finally at the finish line. So in 2023, we had a draft, and that's when we started some of the community outreach that some of you were part of. And then in 2024, we finalized this report, and it was presented to you back in August 27 of 2024. Staff sent the notices that were required by Proposition 218 law on September 6th. And we have done several outreach that we will go over. And of course, tonight, we're here for the public hearing, so we can receive any protests and move forward. So like I mentioned, in 2023, we started an ad hoc committee. Council selected several members. Two of the council members were selected. We have community members. We have a community organization as part of this team, as well as the school district, which is present here tonight. The city manager and city clerk put an agenda together with several dates, and I have a picture of what some of the topics that we talked about. on the different meetings that we had. The last meeting that we had, it was Wednesday, November 8th. But in that meeting, we did provided a very draft rates that we had so far, which they were not that much different than what we're presenting tonight or what we have been presenting. But even then, we knew the route that we needed to go. We made the final tweaks in the last couple of months, and of course, we're here tonight. So in 2024, some of the community engagement city staff met with Tawanas, Rotary Lions Club, Lindsay Hospital Board, Chamber of Commerce. There was coffee talk on the last one on October 4th. And of course, Lindsay met with the Lindsay School District to show them the final numbers and the Montgomery Field House owners. There was also 2 town halls conducted, one in English and one in Spanish. So what we presented in these meetings, it was what is a water system? How does the city of Lindsay receives water? We went through the whole spill, explaining how do we get our sources, that it comes from the canal, comes from the ground, and how do we process. Talk about our old infrastructure, especially our water treatment plant from the 70s. And we also explained to the community how we have very aging infrastructure in the ground that is in the dire need of upgrades. So we also explained the 2 feasibility studies that were done. And the first one was, of course, a water feasibility study that went into depth into analyzing the demand that the city has in the supply with all of our sources and availability of water. We talked about our contract, how do we get the water, how that works, and how that water gets distributed until it gets to your home. We also pointed out all of the deficiencies that were discovered through this feasibility study. A lot of explanation went into how this map came about, and we really stressed how our aging infrastructure is in dire need of upgrades. And of course, we know that we haven't done that many in the last couple of years. We presented the solutions that were identified in the feasibility study. And we all know that we have approximately in need of $40 million in the next 10 years, so we can provide water to our residents. We also explained what well 11 feasibility is and what well 11 is. A lot of people think they have this understanding that their water is non-drinkable, but every year the city is required by law to provide to you a consumer confidence report, and it outlines all of the testing that we are required to do every Tuesday. It's by clockwork and we cannot miss, but we need all of the state requirements. There's a few contaminants that we are in exceedance, and we provide quarterly like the disinfecting byproducts that we have been sending those notices since 2006. So well 11, we explained what the problem is. Like we know it's perchlorate nitrate. We know how to fix it. We have a solution of how to fix it. We recently went through a settlement of perchlorate by itself. And we explained how that settlement came about, how we filed this lawsuit back in 2010. And recently, in the last few months, we came into an agreement. And out of the $9.5 million settlement, we're only receiving $6.6 million because we have to pay the attorney fees. So why do we need to increase rates? Well, not only do we need to provide water, but there's some other issues that we need to comply with, and one of the most important ones is fire flow. If there's a fire, there might be a chance that we cannot provide enough water to put out fires. So we went through that. We highlighted the key findings of the feasibility studies, and we really stressed out the dire need of starting doing upgrades. Then we moved on to the wastewater system. I think you heard me say that the wastewater is not in such a need like the water is. And that's because there was in 1999, there was an expansion that was done and there was some upgrades done to the treatment plant. So we have enough capacity, but of course, our pipes are old and we need to have a game in place so we don't get like we are with the water system. So with that, I'll be happy to pass it on to Lindsay.
As you can see on the screen, these are the last several years where we have been experiencing deficits in the water fund. This is just an illustration from 2021 all the way through last year. And the past 4 years, we've experienced a $1.2 million deficit just on the water fund. And as you saw tonight, that has increased since this presentation was made to $872, which is going to increase that $1.2 million. Deficit spending, as I explained earlier, is when your revenues are not keeping up with the pace of your expenditures and your expenditures exceed those revenues. Our general fund, as you saw earlier tonight as well, is been helping cover those deficits in the water. And now we're at the point where our general fund can no longer help aid the enterprise accounts. The rates haven't been increased since 2009, which was over about 20 years ago. The state audit report posted August 26th of 21 also addressed the concerns of the deficit losses in the enterprise funds. Illustrated here is directly from that state auditor's report in 1920. And you can see that the deficits were already occurring back in 2015 through 2019-20, and they have continued. So as you can see, our other funds can no longer help keep the water rates and sewer rates going at the rate order.
So with that, we all know that we need to start somewhere. So tonight is the night where Eric is going to go through the rate study and give you a summarized synopsis of how he proposed the rates that we're proposing and we send out to the public tonight.
Switch.
Good evening. My name is Eric Helgeson. I'm a Slow Barwell's Associates. And, I did the rate study for our company. I appreciate you having me here. And I'll go through an overview of the rate study, talk about the Prop 13 process for final time for a little while. I hope I'm sure you heard a lot about it. Go over the water, financial plan and rates, wastewater. So to begin with, the objective of the rate study, we want to make sure there's enough revenue, and we want to make sure that the rates are legally compliant. And so those two items drive the amount of rate revenue we need, and then also how we recover that rate revenue, essentially how we split up the pie. The rate study process starts with developing long-range financial plans. We want to make sure that the rates can fund operating costs as well as capital costs, not just now, but into the future. And so that's where those plans that Neighbor talked about come into play. And then we also want to make sure, as I said, that the rates are recovered in a legally compliant and proportional way. So that's where we bring in all of the data, customer data, demand data, and develop rates based on the cost to provide service. I will also say I really appreciate all the help from staff, Adriana and Lacey, and Damon to bring in all the data that we needed. It was a big effort, and we did it in a short time frame. So really appreciate all the help. So the Prop 218 has two components. It has a procedural component, which is where we are tonight. So once you determine what the rates need to be, you must send out notices at least 45 days prior to the rates being adopted, and those notify customers what the maximum rate can be. And customers have the opportunity to submit protests. If the majority of the customers submit protests, then the rates that were noticed cannot move forward. There are also substantive requirements for Prop 218, and those are the requirements that say that rates cannot exceed the cost of service, and that rates also need to be proportional to the benefit provided. So that was the cost of service analysis that I was talking about before. The water enterprise serves over 12,000 people, 3,000 connections. It's important to note that rate revenues are the main source of revenues, and they need to be set at levels adequate to fund the cost of service. As Lindsay pointed out, currently those levels, the rates are not, and so then funding starts coming from other sources of the general fund. But for enterprise funds, the rates are supposed to be sufficient to support the activities of the enterprise. And as I stated before, the rates have not been raised since 2009. As David talked about, there was about 40 million in identified capital needs. When we looked at just the 10-year window and what was feasible to include, we boiled that down to about $26 million. And so that's what the rates are designed to be able to support over the next 10 years. The annual deficit has, on just an operating basis without any capital, we were projecting about 100,000 for next year, and that's just without any repairs or emergencies. Also wanted to point out we're projecting about 4% inflation per year. We want to be a little bit on the conservative side. It's hard to predict these days, but it's been a little less predictable than it has been. And also just, since 2009, there's been about 50% inflation. Also want to note that utility costs tend to rise faster than inflation. So there's been a significant increase in costs since the last rate increase. And it's also important to know that you want revenues to keep pace with those costs over time. Aging infrastructure in the 5-year window with the bill we're covering with the 218 notice, we're anticipating about 2.2 million in cash funded capital spending, and the target is to get to a point where the water enterprise can sustain about $1 million per year in today's dollars. One other thing I want to point out, the water fund currently, what was talked about earlier is the total value of the fund, including all the value of the assets. But as far as actual cash in the bank, there is not a reserve currently for emergencies. And also, if you ever need to get financing, they'll also require that you have some sort of reserve level. So it's important that the water fund ends up having something there. And so that was part of the financial driver as well. This graph shows is essentially a picture of the water fund projection. So the column is the total cost in each year. So, and it's broken down to 3 parts: the capital spending, rate funded capital, debt service, so paying your existing debt, and operating costs. And so the green line is the revenue and the dotted line is the reserves. So this is just showing we're bringing revenues to cover costs. You have significant capital costs coming. So this is also, we push those out. So this is just looking at the 5-year window, but it's building up the revenues to be able to support the ongoing cash funded capital. And I apologize, I probably should have put the 10-year picture I showed in the last presentation, because it shows why it needs to continue at that trajectory. One other thing to note with the debt service, you are also required to meet what's called debt service coverage, which is having your revenues exceed your expenses. And so doing this will also bring you back into compliance with your debt agreement. So we also, in addition to the revenue needs, I talked about, there's the cost of service, making sure the rates are covered equitably and in compliance with Prop 218. Our recommendation for that was to move to what's called a uniform volumetric rate. So essentially right now for the first amount of several units of water, it's included in the fixed charge. And then, so what we're recommending is you move to it where essentially you pay for every unit you use. So it's just using it, you pay the volumetric amount, and it's proportional and easy to explain. We also are recommending the fixed rates move to reflect the capacity of the different customers. Right now, they're pretty, there's not much difference from the largest meter to the smallest meter, when actually a large meter has much more capacity. Can have much, and the capacity it requires kind of sitting in the system is much larger than a smaller meter. So we're recommending that the meter charges move to an industry standard ratio based on the maximum safe flow through the meters to reflect the fixed capacity that you have to support every year, whether water is used or not. We also are recommending removing the fire standby charge because that's reflected in the fixed meter ratio and the fixed charges, and everyone receives fire service benefits, whether you have the sprinkler or whether you are relying on a hydrant on your street. And so these recommendations are going to provide a clear nexus between costs and the rates you pay to be in compliance with Prop 218. They also are going to move to a uniform rate. It actually has less of an administrative burden, leak adjustments, software. Also, it's easier to explain and understand, and it is a better reflection of your current system and costs. So this shows your current rates for a typical single-family customer as they are compared to other other water service providers in your area. Currently, you're below average, and with this first year increase, you'll be slightly above average. One other thing to note is that we did look at 3 different options, and this is the middle of the road option that council chose to pursue. So balancing, getting to the best financial option was the highest, and the most gradual one was the was not as, from a financial perspective, not as ideal. So the Goldilocks choice, and that was the option. So as I mentioned before, you have those 2 tiers currently, where the first 5 units are included in the fixed charge, and there's no charge for those. And then starting at after that, there's $1.02 per unit. We're proposing $1.71 for every unit used, and then we're also proposing that the charges by the fixed charge by meter side be increased to reflect the capacity of those meters. So you can see that the highest end 6-inch meter has a significant change, and there's still a significant change for the lower meters, but it's not quite as pronounced. Moving on to the sewer enterprise, there are about 4,000 sewer customers, and as was stated, sewer enterprise is in a bit better condition than the water enterprise. Still have faced the inflationary pressure. There are we have the same assumptions for future inflation, and also looking at several $1 million of rate funding capital. A portion of it we are to be financed on the sewer side to be able to kind of maintain a more gradual rate increase path. This chart is the same, still the same story as with the water chart. The columns are the expenses, building revenues to cover your expenses. Those final 2 years, there's debt financing rather than capital spending, and that's why there's the columns are less than the green revenue line, but the revenue line will then support future capital spending and also increase debt service. Our rate structure recommendation on the sewer side is for non-residential customers. And so we're recommending that it goes to a more industry standard fixed and volumetric structure. Right now there's kind of a variety of different fixed charges. And we're recommending it goes to a structure based on the strength of the discharge, so low, medium, high. There's also on the next slide. And again, this same, provide more uniformity, consistency, and clear nexus between costs and rates. This shows where Lindsay sits compared to its neighbors. This we left in the option 1, option 2. Option 2 is the choice that the city went with, and what that option is actually to not increase rates this current year, but to let the rate structure changes take effect to mitigate the impact of those shifts to the commercial customers, and then following year, the rate increases will then kick in. So to kind of ease customers into that change. And so this is reflected in the and so all the rates will have a shift based on the new allocation costs. And as you can see, actually the single family customers, their portion is a little bit lower. And so their rate is going to have a slight decrease in the first year and then begin increasing as the overall revenues increase. And then the commercial customers will transition to the fixed and volumetric rate structure, and then have those rates in the first year, and then have those rates increase after that. Combined, your current water and sewer bill is the lowest in the region for a residential customer, and you're still going to be, when you look at the water and sewer bill, at the lower end of the agency. I will say a caveat that every system has a different age, serves a different population. So I don't want to have too much be read into this, but it does show that it's been a long time since you've raised rates, a lot that you're accomplishing with the rate increase, and you're still going to be the lower end of the. And so that wraps up my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll be open for any questions before we proceed. So in front of you, you have the actions and the recommendations for tonight. And one of the things that we wanted to point out is that this is a majority protest. So there's a combination total of 3,044 accounts checked as of yesterday. So the simple majority protest needed will be 1,523 written protests that will need to be submitted to be turned down. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I have 3 questions for you, Neva. I know we're talking about regulating the water and volumetric ratings or whatever. So my question is, are we currently all under the smart meter, or how many of us are actually using smart meters right now?
We do not have a smart meter, but everyone is metered. Because by smart meter, that's when you switch to the one where you can push a button and we can get daily data, and even by the minute. So we don't have that capacity yet, but we do have a project that is identified to be switched, and we put it at the end of the 10th year to be able to put in the infrastructure, because eventually it will be required by the state.
Yes, and that goes into what I'm going to ask. I know what is the lifespan of the current meter?
It depends. So they're guaranteed for 10 years. Sometimes we see that some meters do die within the first 6 months to 12 months, and we have to change them. But because they're under warranty, we send them back and we get them brand new. So it just depends.
The reason I'm asking is because we understand that 10 years goes by when we go and we're here 20 years later and we're finding ourselves in this position. However, there are companies and organizations out there that do offer smart meter, and some of them are sustainable for over 20 years, if not 25. But that being said, is if we're looking at input to water flow and distribution throughout the city, we need to be mindful of future leaks that can be detected with the smart meters, capable of shut-offs if there's a compromised line. And also, if there's something that we need to read immediately, it will give us real-time data. So I think in the future, I'd like to look into something like that and equipping the city residents with a smart meter program.
Thoroughly agree.
That was just what I had to say, but thank you for entertaining them.
Any other questions? Okay. All yours.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Neva. If we have no questions, I'd like to open this up to the public or to the public, excuse me, for public comment. If you have any public comments.
Brett Schimmelpenning, Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Services
Well, Brett,
for the Lindsay High School District. With me.
well,
I oversee all the operational side and business functions of the school district. I just wanted to quickly discuss or bring some points to this item right here. First of all, we do value our relationship with the city. I've been in other districts. I've been here 10 years, but there's always this conflict between the city and school district, and I love being here in Lindsay because we work so well together and do so much for our kids and community here. I was part of the ad hoc committee about a year ago. We had our last meeting, as was stated, in November of 2023. During that meeting, there was a discussion about the problems. I completely understand infrastructure issues and am supportive of an increase. And we would be willing to pay our share of that because the infrastructure for water benefits our kids and our community as well. Lindsay Unified is one of the largest water consumers, one of the biggest customers in the city. I think we're the third largest consumer of that. We were reached out to on Friday, last week, 4 days ago, about this increase. I did not know about this before. I was part of the ad hoc committee about a year ago. I know rates were briefly discussed, but the numbers were not available even in that November meeting about what those would have been. Otherwise, I would have come along time ago. So as one of the largest customers, we would have expected earlier communication, like being more involved in this process. I know notices were probably sent out. We get thousands of pieces of mail. We're just paying our bills. We're not necessarily seeing all those notices. But as a large customer, typically we've been contacted ahead of time. As far as our costs, so I ran some numbers over the weekend as we got this information. We're expecting a 97% increase in the first year alone, going from a budget of about $165,000 to $326,000 in the first year alone. And over the 5-year period, 176% increase, going from a budget of $165,000 to just under $500,000. Pretty significant increase. Again, supportive of an increase, the issue we have here is the rate at which this increase is going up. I did pad my budget about $25,000 to $50,000, which is completely insufficient for what these actual increases are going to be for this current year. And as you know, every dollar spent on things that don't move kids is a dollar taken away out of the classroom. What we were proposing, because of the timing of this, and I feel like we're a little late to the party, which is fine, is a delay in the implementation of this increase so that we can somehow soften this increase over maybe a longer period of time, or look at a different methodology. Just the 4 days of notice is just insufficient for us to even be part of this process, being one of the third largest customers. And one of the things was the fixed rate per meter was kind of a surprise because one of our meters, I think the 6-inch meter, goes from $120 a month to $1,000 a month. Just the fixed cost for that meter alone was an increase. The meter fixed costs 335% increase in the first year and 505% increase over the 5-year period. So again, supportive of supporting the city and all this, and I know nothing's been changed since 2009, which is too bad. But we do want to just bring to your attention the volume of which this increase and the rate at which it's going up in just the first year alone is going to be taking a couple $100,000 away from our classroom. So thank you.
thank you. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to make a public comment on this item? Hearing none, this section is now closed. Okay, so
Well, you know that I did not know that those numbers were astronomical for you, and you brings a really good point. It is a pretty huge chunk for the schools. Not sure how we notified main customers, but if you're only the third, I wonder, who else would use it. Any thoughts? I'd love to hear the thoughts of how to soften this blow particularly the schools, I mean, I think it's a really good point.
Neighbor. Shed some light on this.
Yeah, so, I think Eric can back me up and he's the mastermind on behind of how the rates happen. But I think Eric did, explain how now we're leveling the playing field. Before, the residential accounts were carrying the load, now we're making it what is fair. Now it's proportional to the service that we're providing, to them. So yes, it is a big increase because they're getting a much, bigger service. So I think now we are gonna have to start looking into ways of how do we save water. There is, some very large customers because of the largest, use is outdoor water use. And of course, we know like in their cases, school districts, they have a lot of landscaping. So I think we do have to work together to try to minimize that area because outdoor water use is one of the biggest use in any type of account.
Yeah, I'm all for working together. In this situation, but I do know that we did, provide ample time for notifications for the businesses or any other organizations. Fortunately, it sounds like someone didn't get that, notification or it was overlooked, but we did send that out, in several modalities. It was in hard copy or social media and so on. But I understand your concern and thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Can I get some more clarification on staff? Okay, so now that we're leveling the playing field per usage, right? So does this mean that the school before weren't paying the water they were using to feed? Now they will? No. So I just want to understand.
So your rates haven't been adjusted in 20 years roughly. And so, maybe what made sense at that time, has changed. And so, now from our perspective, the larger meters should be paying, everyone should be paying, it needs to pay more, over $800,000 more, which is roughly a 50% increase in the first year in revenues for everyone. And so the, large meters are also have large volumes. So we're also looking at the split between fixed and variable costs. So if we shift more to the less to the fixed cost and be a larger shift to the volumetric cost for what you use, which would also probably have a significant impact on higher water users, especially larger industrial users. So it's kind of catch-22 on both sides. But I will say, from a fixed cost perspective, I do think that the new rates more equitably spread that the fixed ongoing costs of the water system between customers as opposed to how they were charged.
So before you sit down, I have a question. I know he mentioned, the gentleman mentioned there that we would in his first year experience make 7% increase and then the following year 176% increase. My question is, what was their output on water as of this date? Do you know how many gallons were being used on a monthly average, a daily, a weekly, to come up with that?
I would have to defer, like that's a very specific question on the actual water use per meter, but I think that is something we could find the actual couple of years of water use per meter and what look at the use times the volumetric rate time plus the fixed cost and see what the difference is. But on a fixed basis, on just the straight fixed charges, those costs are going up significantly per month. And then the volumetric rates are also increasing. But yeah, I'd have to look at the specific use by meter to know the percentages. So.
And again, I'm all for working for the resolution, but I mean, if we don't have numbers to compare from what was being used in the past to what is potentially being the 97% increase, to 176% increase, then I don't know where those numbers lie. And it's kind of hard for us to gauge how much is actually being used. It's not the one school, I'm assuming it's the school district. So, thank you.
Just in this last period, they used approximately about 1 million gallons, or 1 million cubic feet. Just rough estimate.
Yeah, and I mean,
Drought, we gotta go drought resistant.
yeah, and just what this means, we increase rates for the schools, that takes away dollars from the classrooms. I hate to see programs getting cut from the schools now because of this big article from the schools. I just really want to make that clear, what should be next have on the people and the students. I know it has to be done, and I support it. Well, we can really work together here and lessen the blow for you guys, because these are our kids, these are the future. And I hate to see programs or anything like that.
Well, I don't think programs will be cut. There are 3 bonds that are being given to the school district from our property taxes. And I know the property tax values are rising, so I don't know if you need an adjustment for that.
It's an open conversation, but
Do you wanna come up?
I can't, well, I don't know.
So come on up, make sure the microphone's on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Our bonds are strictly for facilities, and those bonds, we have capacities we can access. We can get $60 per every $100,000 assessed valuation. Right now, those bonds they're tapped out. But as property tax goes, we can't access those. Those are strictly for facility improvements. For example, classrooms, we use some bond monies to improve that, but we get 200,000 at a time out of that to help the facility. So it wouldn't help with this problem. We can't use it for the operational costs.
Right, but you could, manage the money elsewhere because
Potentially.
you're using.
And I just want to be
you're using the
clear,
Property tax money.
I wouldn't
You're building.
necessarily expect cuts. It's going to
yeah,
impact.
give me some clarity.
It's going to impact us. Where it comes from, who knows? We have some reserves, but I just want you to know it's just an unexpected increase for us.
Yeah.
It could impact programs, sure. It might impact some small programs, but we're not looking at massive layoffs or cuts or anything because of this. I just want you to know.
And that helps.
Yeah, it is an impact, but it's not going to be overly detrimental to us. Okay, and we still value our relationship with the city. I completely understand the problem we have here. Totally understand. Wish the infrastructure would have been addressed 20 years ago. But it wasn't, and we all have to negotiate. It's just the amount of the increase it was like sticker shock seeing that go up. And now my budget's done for this year. It's being implemented in January, so I've got to do some stuff with the current year budget that I was not anticipating this year to that extent. And then 5 years from now, we'll have to adjust. But again, we wish we would have been brought into this conversation a little bit earlier, so we could have had these conversations and provided data back and forth. Maybe come up with a plan that maybe 6-7 years out to lessen the blow, so we can all plan for your.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Right.
I apologize. Yeah, for that.
I work for a public entity, I totally know.
May I add, this doesn't go into effect till January, correct? So if you already budgeted about 50 to 60 in your budget, it's about a 25,000-30,000, because that 97% was for a full year, because we multiplied by 12 on the spreadsheets.
And it's,
So you'll be good.
yeah, for this year, I'm already this year, yeah. We'll be going.
Let's stay in communication. I want to hear one.
I know we've been working on providing the information and having town hall meetings for both our Spanish and English speakers to come on out and voice their opinions. I don't know how that would slip.
I don't know, I saw the slides, Lacey was kind of sharing, I saw the, wow, we should have been more involved, but, we're running a school district, we don't always get that information. And usually when we have such a large impact, we're contacted directly, like we were, it was just 4 days ago instead of.
But they notices were sent to them?
Yes,
Yeah,
every
they were
customer,
posted.
there was actually 27 that went to them, because they have 27 accounts.
Again.
This was a way to promote equity across the playing field, whether it was an organization, whether it was a homeowner, whatever. Unfortunately, you find yourself in a position where you're paying multiple schools water usage, right? And with the rough calculation that we're getting, $1 million. That's quite a bit of water.
Yeah, and one thing to consider, and I don't know if this is in the financial projections, but before it was not financial, looking at water conservation, like turf things, wasn't cost effective for us to do it because water was so cheap. Now that it's more expensive, if we were to take
big fields and turn them into turf, is that gonna negatively impact your financial projections going forward for all infrastructure needs, because you're no longer collecting that money from one of your largest customers anymore? In other words, you price yourself so high that we're gonna use other things to pull, then you no longer have that revenue source from us, because now we're using turf and not water in the street. Just something to consider. Because
But we still need to conserve water.
I totally agree. We're all for conserving. It's just sometimes you have to balance how much it costs to do that versus, and now the costs are so high, it might be worthwhile to actually invest in those improvements. But now we're shutting the meter off, and then you don't have that revenue stream to fund your infrastructure. Just something to consider. Not promising we're gonna do that. I'm just saying, the price gets so high, we start looking at, is that feasible to do that? Would we rather send the money to the city or invest that money in turf and other things to make this work? But anyway, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, for sure. Well, you'll hear from me 100 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. I know this matter has been closed for comment, and we have discussed. Do I have a motion for this item?
Okay, we have 4 separate items. So the
Oh.
first motion will be to receive the water and sewer rate study report from Bardo Wilson as final. Do I have a motion?
Motion for, receive the report from Barter, Wells and Associates as final.
I second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Saros, a second by Councilmember Valerio. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
So moving on to section 2, proposition 218.
Yes, proposition 218, public hearing, increasing the water and sewer rates for the city. Do I have a motion? To enact Prop 218.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
You can have a motion. if you want.
I'll motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Villarreal. Do I have a second? Flores will be my second. All in favor, aye?
Aye. Moving on to number 3, adoption resolution 44-37, approving a rate increase for water services. We have a motion.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Flores and a second by Councilmember Saros. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
And moving on to section 4, adopt resolution 24-38, approving rate increase for sewer services. We have a motion to approve this item.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Villarreal and a second by Councilmember Saros. All in favor, aye?
Aye. Okay. We'll move into a discussion item at this time, 13.1, historical review of abandonment of public roadway, 300 block of North Oxford. Submitted by Ryan.
Yeah, so as I'm sure you all remember at the last council meeting, there was a request for some more information regarding the closure of Oxford Street in between Hermosa and 2nd Street. Was able to do a little bit more digging and found that closure actually happened in 1989. There was no staff report that was with the resolutions. But in the staff report, it'll outline that there was a public hearing held, or a notice for a public hearing held on February 6th of 1989 regarding the proposed abandonment of the roadway on Oxford Street, just north of Hermosa. On that date, the city council then, which consisted of Mayor Lencioni, Von Blue, Councilmember Bugni, Councilmember Hendricks, and Councilmember Linville. They proceeded unanimously with the closure and to hold a formal public hearing on March 6th of 1989. That also passed unanimously with the same council members. That transfer included a provision for a permanent easement for the city and right-of-way, allowing the city to construct, repair water, wastewater, or public utility lines if needed. Those were then recorded with the recorder's office and the assessment office. In the packet, I've included the map that was recorded as well as the resolution being filed with the county. So all of the legal requirements appear to have been met. It was properly noticed based on my understanding of what was required. And that was completed, as I said, in 1989 under recorder's number 1989-22411.
The reason why that was brought up was because we had,
I think it's there was 374 North Oxford and then 396 North Oxford regarding the zoning change. So
right, the zoning change.
right,
was
so
their main concern. It's because those homes are older now, and I guess there's a provision or some type of something,
There's a non-compliance ordinance.
yeah, an ordinance that they could not repair their homes or remodel their.
correct. So at 374 North Oxford, this had been brought up last year. There was a public comment regarding that property. I believe there's an application pending for that to be used as a storage yard for a construction company. So that's the 374, which was the old church. I think the one that you brought up is actually the northmost one, which is 396 North Oxford. That is a single family residential house. So based on we talked about this with staff. This is just the information of what occurred. If when we come up to request for future items, if this is something that council would like us to pursue the zone change on behalf of the city, I can come back and prepare that. We just need some direction from council that that's what you want us to do.
Can I add?
Absolutely.
So the question about the stipulation of the ordinance for substandard conditions, they are grandfather in. So if they have to make any repairs, they're totally entitled to. There is a stipulation that if there's a fire and there's a complete destruction of the structure, they have 6 months to pull the building permit so they can keep their substandard condition. So as long as they come in and they talk to city services, we honor that. So we know that it's impossible to get plans and, you know, engineering plans within 6 months. So as long as there's that conversation happening that, yeah, they're contracting an architect, an engineer, a contractor, whoever, and they are going to be submitting for a building permit within the next year, normally we would honor that.
Okay, good to know, because I guess he had already gone to city services.
There has been, when I was still here, the story has been changed. First, they wanted a yard, and then they wanted to do apartments, and we gave them the information.
Yeah.
The old church, they wanted to do
No,
some.
not church.
Oh,
Mr. Esparza's house.
The house.
the one on the north, yeah.
The house that's there, the only house that's there.
Yeah.
So from what I understand, the ordinance that was put in place was put in place to disqualify them from rebuilding if their house burned at 60 to 70%. From what I understand, I don't have the contract in front of me. I don't understand why something like that was put in place. If it's private property, and I understand that there's businesses around that, there has to be at some point.
That is why the California building code, actually, the percentage of how much, if there's so much damage, that's when the stipulation comes in. But in the city of Lindsay, we don't do that. We work with the property owners, and like I said, as long as they're talking to city services, that should be something that their grandfather in. Of course, if that home is destroyed 65%, and 5 years later, they want to come back and rebuild it. And we never heard from them. That's when we.
So does the organization absorb the property? Is that what's happening, or because I'm under the impression, I'm just looking for clarification. I'm under the impression that that property is private property. So homeowner, he owns his property.
Correct.
He's surrounded by business, right, which is the back of the house.
No, so he has the Second Street, which is a public right of way. And then he also has access towards that little, it goes around the corner fronting the packing house, and he still has that public right of way.
But I guess where I'm leading for my question was, does the property owner retain the property rights on his property?
Yes, of course.
100%.
Yes.
Then why is there a stipulation on the statute saying that it burns down?
You cannot rebuild a residential like he has it. That's by the California Building Code. Just so it gives the ability to the city that, let's say you have conversations with a packing house and they have this master plan that they're expanding. That's when the city pulls that trigger and says, no, we're not gonna allow you if you exceeded the 6 months. But that's a discretionary item. So as long as they're talking to staff, they can work with them.
This isn't a Lindsay requirement, it's inconsistent use. So it's basically his house, his property back in the 80s got zoned light industrial. He has, right now, it's obviously a residential house. The property isn't going to be taken from him. If it burned down where the state law is that if it's over 60% and if he tries to rebuild, it would be the inconsistent use. So he's basically rebuilding a property in a light industrial zone. He's trying to put a single family residential house. So but it doesn't, he wouldn't get the property taken from him, he wouldn't lose it. And
So right now he's good to go.
As long as it communicates.
I think the 6 month, again, the 6 month window is the state law regarding the inconsistent use. So if it changes and he's trying to do something past the 6 month and he's trying to build a residential house in a light industrial zoning.
That's only if there was a fire. Right now, he
Yes.
just wants to remodel the house.
There's not,
There's no
So,
stipulation.
was there a contract previous to that? I don't know what he's going off of. I wish he was here, but,
so when I was doing this research, it's changed hands over the years. I think it's through family members. The last title change on that property was in 2022. So it could have been from family members, but there was a registered title change with the Tulare County Recorder of the deed of that property in 2022. So I didn't see anything,
Or
and
his mother.
that very well could be the case, but it's not like a Lindsay requirement. The kind of what you're talking about is it's a state.
Very good. Thank you.
Being a discussion, I would like to open this up to the public, for public comment, if anyone is interested in making public comment.
This one is just a discussion item. This was just to discuss what the history of the street closure was, and then if the council wanted to take
So
that.
at this point, it's good as is written. So if anything was to happen, he still has the opportunity.
I will again kind of defer to the long-term city services director that if that's how things have been done, we would definitely.
Okay.
His grandfather being.
I want to provide some clarification if we're asking future, then we're in a position to do that. Okay. At this point, we're gonna move into the executive closed session, and council, if you were to remain here, I think we're gonna stay here today. If I can have the audience just exit for a minute.
No, actually, I think we're gonna. Yes, it's with YouTube.
I thought we were staying.
Stay here.
We can't.
We're gonna go to.
Not with the YouTube. Okay, we're back up.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Are we back up online?
Yes.
Coming back to the closed session, have the report at this time. I will move into request for future items. Is there a request for future item for any council member?
No specific request, but a few local talented artists reached out saying if they can get info on making a performance like at the park or at the school theater or at the theater. So I can just get info as to, like how a local artist can just provide that.
Are they in contact with our art center?
I have no idea.
You
But
know, something on Facebook stating that we were gonna have something here in Lindsay for artists and
Oh, I know.
is that a scam or is it real?
I didn't see that.
Are you talking about the museum?
Yeah.
That was the one, was it the one Mercy was talking about?
Oh, yeah, the little concert.
That happened a while ago, like.
No, I just thought.
It was
Oh.
a art exhibit
Yes.
over at this museum
Right
right
next
here.
door.
Oh, is it?
It's-
I just thought today that they were accepting exhibitors.
For this place right next door.
Yes.
I have no
I
idea.
believe so.
So it didn't state where it was at, so.
Okay. I believe it was Mercy who brought it to a public comment.
They're constantly putting on shows and stuff. I get emails from, they can just go. I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I think the direction is to provide them with information.
Yeah, because they want to know like if what what they need to do to go to the park, to go to the theater, to maybe use the front. I don't know what they need, but they do want to bring something here. I could not bring it up.
I would have them call city services.
Okay. What- okay.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank
I can.
you for that. We go anyone else or add anything for drive. None, hearing none, this meeting is now adjourned.